Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive, literally and figuratively, into the wild, volatile Philippine coastline. We're going to see exactly how literature acts as this incredible inner mirror for our own chaotic, everyday lives. It's not just words on a page, guys. It's a vivid reflection of those emotional storms we are all navigating. Let's get right into it.
Just listen to this opening line from Carlos P. Angelis's absolute masterpiece of a poem, Gabu. The sea always coming on, derelict and blue. Instantly, you're right there, immersed in the relentless rhythm of the Ilocos Norte coast. And that word derelict? It implies something abandoned, unpredictable, totally worn out. Kind of sounds exactly like how we feel when faced with nonstop challenges, right?
Now, to actually feel the brine and the pounding surf Angelis is talking about, we have to lean into sensory imagery. This is the literary magic that physically anchors us right in the middle of the storm. We're not just looking at a picture of water. We are hearing the crash. We are tasting that heavy, salt-concentrated air. So before we wade too deep into these waters, we really need to equip ourselves with some tools, analytical lenses, if you will, to understand what this poetry is actually reflecting back at us. We're going to use a really cool dual approach for this. On one hand, structuralism is going to help us look under the hood at the poem's mechanics, how the tone, imagery, and theme build this intense atmosphere. But on the other hand, we'll use Louise Rosenblatt's reader response theory to map those mechanics directly onto your own personal experiences. We're turning the text into a lived, breathing transaction. And this brings us to lyric poetry. What's absolutely crucial here is how the use of the lyric I just dials up the vulnerability to 10. Lyric poetry forces us to be direct witnesses to the speaker's internal havoc. We're throwing out chronological plots and zooming straight into the raw, beating heart of personal struggle. All right, let's actually decode Angelis's Gabu and see how he builds this profound physical and emotional landscape. Putting our structuralist glasses back on, check out phrases like salt-bleached wasteland and derelict sea. They systematically construct this wildly vivid atmosphere of natural chaos. Angelis is painting a bleak, battered shore that's just endlessly pounded by an ocean that frankly refuses to quit. But here is the real kicker. This coastal destruction, it's a massive metaphor. Angelis is definitely not giving us a weather report for Ilocos Norte. He's handing us a diagnosis of the human condition, comparing the totally unpredictable forces of nature to our very own internal struggles. When you place them side by side, it hits you. The restless, relentless waves literally represent the chaos of human life. The sea's constant pounding against that battered shore, it perfectly captures our own exhausting, endless search for a place to truly belong. So, putting reader response theory into action, I want you to genuinely ask yourself, how does this pounding sea mirror the invisible storms you're navigating right now? What exactly are the waves crashing against your personal shore today? You know, for so many students and young adults, this imagery just hits the nail on the head. The relentless academic pressures, the back-to-back exams, that totally frightening uncertainty of the future. The poem acts as an inner mirror, reflecting the turbulent transition into adulthood, where it just feels like the sea keeps coming on. But because treading water in that chaotic sea is so incredibly exhausting, human nature naturally looks for an escape route. We crave a sanctuary, and Angelis beautifully calls this the neutral heart. Up against the furious pounding of the sea, the poem drops in this concept of ice, a state of total emotional stillness used as a shield. It's basically the psychological equivalent of freezing your own emotions just to survive the constant battering of daily anxiety. In that same vein, the battered shore and those water-worn rocks represent our desperate craving for permanence and spiritual grounding. When literally everything else around us is fluid and chaotic, we instinctively search for the stone, that solid, unmoving foundation we can finally stand on. Which brings us to a pretty vital question for this explainer. When the sea inevitably wreaks havoc, how do we begin the incredibly hard work of rebuilding our inner shore? How do we get our footing back? To figure out how to build resilience from the wreckage, we can turn to a fascinating framework pioneered by the artist Louise Bourgeois. Her theory argues that the core purpose of art and literature is actually to repair the damages inflicted on us by life. And we see this exact desire to let the light back in, especially when we're drowning in academic or future anxieties, captured perfectly by Luisa A. Gloria in her poem, To Unravel a Torment, You Must Begin Somewhere. She talks about wanting to stand in an aperture, a tiny opening for light, just to be truly seen amidst her own torments and the floodlights of the moon. What's so wild here is how Igloria uses super mundane items, like a safety pin festooned with cords, to process massive, heavy internal conflicts. She places these everyday objects right next to surreal metaphors like the moon's comb, which represents those permanent scars and life choices that irrevocably shape who we are. But these aren't just pretty words. They build into a literal action plan for resilience. Igloria writes about lifting yourself out of the cold current to stack stones and rub sticks together. Because even when there are things we absolutely cannot take back, we can always choose to do the restorative work. We can always stack stones to rebuild our shore. And we can really see the lasting impact of that kind of resilience in our final piece today, Danton Remoto's famous reflection on the execution of Philippine national hero Jose Rizal, told through the eyes of his former teacher. In this incredibly powerful mix of pride and sorrow, Remoto compares Rizal to a star that is physically dead, but whose light just continues to shimmer across the sky. It's living proof that the stones we stack, our actions, our resilience, leave a guiding light way, way after our own physical storm has ended. Looking at this through the lens of critical pedagogy, we learn that a person's identity isn't just some fixed point in history. It's a shimmering, fluid influence, shaped by how others see it. Rizal's light continues to guide the nation, helping entirely new generations navigate their own derelict seas.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. Amidst the relentless crashing of your own academic pressures, your anxieties, the whole unpredictable mess of transitioning through life, what lasting stones will you choose to stack today? Thanks for exploring these ideas with me. Keep learning, and whatever you do, keep building your shore.